Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day, and today we are here with a video on interesting prices in 2021 in old school RuneScape. This has been a pretty fun time, I guess, coming off of 2020 in terms of where gear is at, botted items, farmed items. It's a fun time. So I've been watching the market a good bit in hopes that I could put some of my money somewhere. I'll talk about where I put my money this video. Don't worry though, I'm sitting on it long term. Anyone that knows me knows that I have more than enough money. I'm not gonna make a weird YouTube video to, milk you guys for 30% profits. I don't care. And real quick, popping in, if you don't believe me, if you absolutely don't believe me, then by all means, feel free to check out my stream down below. There you can find me streaming, and there I can show you my bank at any time. Also have a Twitter down there, other socials you can follow, feel free. Anyways, the prices have been really fun to look at, and there's kind of a lot of items that are at a strange point, so I just want to go ahead and talk about them. And I guess the best way to start before we get into kind of looking at graphs and whatnot, a lot of this heavily pertains to kind of botted items or things that have been heavily farmed recently. So in talking about botted items, the way that I feel for the most part is that there is a somewhat decent floor to these items, because Jagex will get a lot of backlash if these prices drop below a certain point. The game will kind of start to get broken in a sense. Like if red chinchompas drop below 800 GP and they're, just insanely cheap, then the game does get affected by that, and I think then people will start to say something, and I think it'll just be something that's on Jagex's mind, and they'll have to try to, get things under control. So I think you always have that kind of working for you, that if stuff does get out of whack, at least something will be done to try to negate that. And I think that if you see prices so heavily affected by bots, a lot of people are gonna just think badly upon Jagex. It's just kind of how it goes, whether it's their fault or not, I don't know enough, so I can't decide. However, I think they'll do their best effort. And in addition to that, the Twitch Prime promos are something that we'll definitely have to look out for. I think Jagex has kind of, done a good spurt of them lately, so I don't feel like there will be a ton. And if there are, again, I just the memeing and how much people are going to recognize the bots and Jagex is just going to get roasted for. I think eventually, you got to be able to either get rid of the bots or stop the promos all the time. And I think that, they'll recognize that. So that's kind of my overarching feeling towards like heavily botted items right now. With that said, we'll go ahead and get on into some prices. So we'll start with Chaos Runes. In terms of their price graph right here, we're going to be doing a lot of yearly searching because, we just need to get a good perspective of where we are, and there's a lot of changes that we have to note. As far as the graph, obviously we are at a very low point, which is intriguing to some people. However, personally, I just don't think that the upside's there. As you can see, the highest it did get was about 100 GP, and that's about the highest it's ever gotten. So, if the best thing happens and you buy for 53 and it goes up, then you do double your money. However, there are other things that I think you could double your money with. And also, I never really like to recommend people to buy runes and sit on them, because runes are just something that Jagex kind of pumps in and out of the game at their own will, and you really have no backbone there to save you. In this case, Fury prices are what is going to kind of be that backbone to an extent. As you can see here, this follows basically the exact path. Furies and Chaos Runes are heavily linked because they go through the Tazar shop to be able to get that Onyx. So, makes sense why they'd be like this. However, in addition to Chaos Runes, you also have Silver Ore, and that, again, same thing, because again, you can sell Silver Ore for Tokul to then buy an Onyx. It all kind of comes back to each other. And basically, with these Volcano updates, so much ore and just runes and all of this is getting pushed into the game to the point to where they can be kind of supplements for each other. You don't need just Chaos Runes. You can have, some Silver Ore too. You can have this. There's a lot of supply of this stuff. And so at the end of the day, I mean, if Furies are the backbone of that kind of, I don't know if people are going to always pay, 3 mil for a Fury just because that's what it was back in the day. I think, $1.5 million or 2 mil is also pretty fair for a Fury. So the main upside is the Blood Fury, and if anything were to come with that, where it was, more useful, causing Furies to go in big demand, but that's about it. And again, it's not going to go crazy high in my opinion. So the next item is Red Chinchompas. This is an interesting one because it is a heavily botted item, and as you can see, it started the year near 2,000 apiece, and now we are down to a little over 1.1k at the moment. This says a bit higher, but it's actually gone down a bit, which is good if you're looking to buy. And I mean, as low as it got is 1k. So basically, I mean, what I'd say here is, like, red chins, again, like I said earlier, if they go below like 800, you know, the game's busted. So I don't know, maybe really cheap range XP one day is the future, but I just don't realistically see that happening. And I think that that's a pretty high floor. And so it is good to be able to see kind of a bounce back. Honestly, I wouldn't really invest in an item until you see some sort of tick back up that shows a sign of life. So this is really, really nice, and, you know, a fallback of like 50 GP after this is to be expected. Whenever something kind of comes up so much so quick, it's gotta drop back down a little bit, and that's a good time to buy. If you start to see it kind of go back up again, then you know there's signs of life, and that's what you want. This is kind of something I would recommend more so than Chaos Runes, because I think there's a realistic floor, and I think the upside is about just as high. And I know red chins are always going to be in demand for actual red chins. Like, people are going to want to throw chins and get ranging XP. I don't know if people are going to want Chaos Runes. Also decided to go to the lifetime graph for red chins, and as you can see, they've never really gone below 1k, so 1.1k, again, I feel like is a really good price. And then next up is the Ferocious. As far as this, on a monthly scale, nothing too crazy, kind of stayed the same price, little climb there, but if we go on a yearly, you will see just an insane chart here. So it starts at about 6 mil, 6.3, climbs to 7-ish, and kind of peaks at 8 there for a bit. These are kind of unstable. They've been between 2 and 8 mil for a while, kind of because of bots and never knowing really what they're worth. And then, you know, as you can see here, start to fall. If we scroll down, the first kind of little bot wave that you can see, like a huge supply increase, starts right there, and that's kind of when the big dip happens. And then from there, it just kind of stays still for a long while. They don't really know what to do, and then they just keep dropping. And if we go down, this demand and like, look at all of this supply. Look how much just got dumped in that short amount of time. And as you can see, the blue line's the demand. There's not a lot of demand for these items. Like, it's just Ferocious. They're pretty niche, so when you flood something this much, I mean, it makes sense why it is where it is. So personally, I'm not as big of a fan of these. I do think that they'll go up and down depending on if they're getting farmed, but I mean, it's just, it's hard when you don't have an item that has a real price. Like, I don't know why the person that was farming this wouldn't sell them for 2 mil, 1 mil, 5, you know. Do I think they go much lower? I'd imagine not, but I just don't feel incredibly safe. Personally, I did buy a good bit of them. If we look on the quarterly scale, they kind of dropped here. I bought a bunch, and then I kind of sold on a couple of the peaks and just got out of it because I wanted to go to something else, because again, I didn't really feel safe with these items. Again, you know, high risk, high reward. So this is a little bit higher risk, potentially higher reward. It's just such a flood of these items that it's hard to get them out of the game, honestly. They're pretty expensive, so I think people sell them off if they don't need them. So it's hard to get all that supply, you know, fulfilled. But again, this supply chart just really shows the problem. Like, oh my God, that's absurd. And then this is the first one that I've actually bought into. I feel like I'll, you know, just say it so people know. Maybe I'm biased, but you can see kind of the increase that they've gone through. Personally, I was buying a lot right down here when they were like 25k each. I was paying people 27k if they buy them for me, and they could make a little bit of money off me. I had a quick kind of scoop back up, and then now we're just kind of lingering back to where we were. On a yearly scale, though, these things have dropped so much, and that's why I think they're a good, you know, good long-term hold, not so that I can, you know, merge you. I mean, just look at that. Oh, I mean, geez, man. They did climb a bit. I will show their all-time graph, and you'll kind of see where they hang now. I don't know if they'll get to 70k again relatively soon, but I do think Ranarr seeds being, you know, 25 to 30k, that's probably near the floor. Prayer potions are worth, you know, a good bit in the game as far as utility, so people will always pay for it, and if there's more reason along the time of a PVM update, then people will pay a lot more. So personally, I'm just holding for a long time until there's PVM demand, probably. If we go on a larger scale, this is the all-time graph for Ranarr. So as you can see, they typically tend between 25 to 50k. But I mean, for the last year, 2 years, it's been closer to 50k, and we even had, like you saw, a time where they were close to 70. Personally, I just always kind of note whenever people in my clan chat lose their mind. And people in my clan chat usually lose their mind whenever bonds go to, 7 mil, however high. And then the other time is when prayer potions are so expensive. And it just always kind of rings true that at some point, people are going to need bonds, they're going to need prayer pots. That's just the way the game goes. There's waves of supply, waves of demand, and so I'll try to be there one day to supply that demand. Another item is the necklace of anguish. If we look down at the graph, I mean, these graphs kind of say it all as far as where we're at. The anguishes were about 16 mil, and then over time had climbed as high as 18. This was in a time post the change to the Monkey Madness 2 plugin, the demonic plugin that kind of aided you. So whenever that was taken away, the prices slowly gained over time. And now, kind of since, post-COVID, these things have absolutely tanked. I think there's a couple reasons. I think they're obviously getting farmed a lot. I also think a lot of med-level accounts that have been made since COVID happened. This is going to be one of their kind of main med-level moneymakers, so I think they just naturally go here. And so throughout the year, these things have just been farmed and farmed. Also, onyxes have gone down. That's a small piece of this, about $1.5 million worth. But overall, I mean, anguishes are so cheap, and this is, one of those items I talk about, like a floor price. How low do you think it can go? I'm not sure. I don't think it can go terribly low, though. I think Zenites have obviously a really vital use in the game, so I think they'll always be worth a good bit. And one of the reasons I think that maybe these have dropped so much is because with demonic gorillas getting farmed a ton, there's not a lot of other drops on that table, at least that are dropped at a high rate, that can drop in the market, because it's a lot of high alch stuff, a lot of coins, a lot of bad arrows that already sell for really cheap, just stuff that's already so low it's hard to go lower. So the one thing that can vary whenever more people camp it is the Zenites, which is why I think it's kind of gone down. But over time, I don't think that these are easy to kill by any means. I think they're actually annoying, and I think that people will tend away from them long term, which I think makes them, worthwhile in the end. And then the final item before I kind of get into my big purchases and what I think is really going to stonk, Dex Prayer Scrolls. Right here, we're looking at a monthly scale, gone down a little bit, and if we switch to a yearly, gone down a lot a bit from, 40, 45 all the way down to, near 20. It's a fall from grace, no doubt. What I want to say about this is it's an item that I don't want people to think that it's an indicator of market health by any means. A Dex Prayer Scroll is an item that is kind of just an accessory drop to whatever you're doing. If you're doing Chambers of Xeric, you're just farming in Prayer Scrolls. You really don't care about them. You'll sell them instantly, and there's really not a wave of demand for them. It's just kind of, whenever someone finally wants to upgrade their account, and you'll always be selling to a less off person than the person before. That's just kind of how it is. And so items that are constantly farmed into the game through common methods are just always going to keep going down. Now at some point maybe it kind of levels out, but I mean as you can see here, it doesn't look great. So I just want to keep people away from doing that type of stuff, because it can create a false reality in your head where you think an item's going down because of various reasons, when in reality it's just farmed to death and will just constantly kind of crash. Another example of that is the Draconic Vizzy. As you can see here, the price graph where it just continues to go down and down and down, and this is a rare drop, like 1 in 5k, 1 in 10k, depending on what you're killing, so it's pretty rare, and it gets farmed into the game this much. Imagine something like Prayer Scrolls, which are getting farmed into the game at such a greater rate, and you can see why this happens. Over time, there's just so much supply of these items that, no one's going to overpay for them, because people are always just going to want to sell them. And the last item or group set of items we'll be talking about is something I've bought a lot of and I'm very high on. It's a long-term hold, a lot like the Ranarrs that I was talking about earlier. But if we look at the yearly graph, this is Twisted Horns and kind of what they've done. If we go back to kind of when they were coming out and hitting the market, as you can tell, they just drop in price for a good bit. It seemed like for about a month to two, they kind of kept falling down, and then over time they just kept on climbing. And I mean, it kind of makes sense with Twisted Horns, Trailblazer items, whatever, because there's a lot of supply at the very beginning. There's not going to be enough demand to keep up with the supply realistically, because even if you want to invest in it or merch it, your limits are going to be low, and if you want to buy it for, you know, Fashionscape, then you're only going to be buying a couple of whatever item you need. So initially there's a lot of supply, and over time it just kind of goes out the door and those items start to rise. Now a lot of people might say, well, you know, more people than ever have played this league. Are you worried about that? Of course, you know, I'm worried about everything to an extent, but that's kind of cooked into the prices. That means that there's more people trying to sell all this stuff, which I think means that maybe there's even more opportunity to buy. And as you can see here with the long-term graph, they absolutely tanked whenever, you know, the new Twisted League was coming out and you could buy it with reward points, and went down from 25 mil all the way to close to 5, a little under 5 even. And that's where we're at down here right now. So going from 25 mil to 5 mil because, you know, it's released and on the table and everyone has points, I understand it, but I think that there is, you know, definitely room for this stuff to bounce back up. And I mean, a good sign is that it kind of has already to an extent, which is definitely nice. Now, a lot of it's just working out what's meta to buy. Personally, I'm going to go on over my collection and talk about what I've been getting. So this is what I have. These are my investments right now. Like I said, a lot of Trailblazer stuff. I have tool ornament kits because I just personally like them, and I think high-level players will pay a good bit for some tool ornament kits. Trailblazer graceful ornament kits because the wiki was always saying that these were the most profitable to buy, and by kind of checking prices, it seemed like they were the least profitable to buy. So given that, I felt it was worthy of purchasing, considering they were so cheap relative to the points. Twisted Horns, I am a big fan of these. I think that, you know, recolored Slayer helms always look sick. They look really, really good. And a lot of my theory with this type of stuff is that high-level players, you know, they'll pay a little extra even if it's down the line. They'll pay for this type of stuff because, I mean, personally, I would on most of my accounts. Like, obviously, I'm at a different stage of the game, but even like Twisted Blueprints, this was like, they're not that expensive. They're like 3-4 mil. I mean, that changes the entire decor of your house. So there are other rewards that are more expensive than this, that are just like little ornaments in your house, while a Twisted Blueprint can change the entire look of it. And like I said, Ranarr seeds, I have those for prayer potion reasons, but ultimately these are all holds that I am doing right now because I believe in them long term. I don't really have anything to do with my extra money, so I threw them in here, and I decided to make a video and share it with you guys because I always like talking about this type of stuff, what I'm doing in game and what other items are doing that I'm keeping an eye on. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, make sure to leave a like. Any questions you got, feel free to leave them in a comment down below, and on top of that, if you guys want to see more videos like this as soon as they go live, make sure to subscribe. And with that said, hopefully you guys have a wonderful day, and peace.